All right, what's up, everyone? My name is Joe Tucson, and I'm super excited to sit down and chat with Angels and Airwaves producer extraordinaire, Aaron Rubin. We're going to take a track by track dive into their new album, Lifeforms, which came out on September 24th. So if you haven't already, go check that out. Aaron, thanks again for joining me today. And just first off, how are you doing? Are you enjoying your time with the crew away out on tour? Do you get to relax a little bit, or is it just business as usual for you?
No, it's business as usual.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here doing. Somebody always bugs me for something while they're on the road. Like, hey, we need this, we need that. I want to do this song. Send over this, and I'm also scoring Tom's movie Monsters of California.
Yeah, nice.
So we've been getting that all set up and passing around sessions between me and Elon and all that stuff. So I don't think I've had a moment to myself, even though I was like, once they're gone, I'm going to be able to do a lot more.
Well, kind of figured that. I saw Elon just came out with a new song too that you mixed. So that sounds great. Really excited to hear what he's coming out with. Totally different from Angels, of course, but that's what I love about it. So, with that being said, I think we'll just hop right in. So, like I said before, this is kind of a track by track breakdown or discussion, just to kind of see how these songs came to fruition. And this album is so unique in itself, and we'll get into that. With all the sounds are very different from song to song. So I'm personally as well, just dying to know how this stuff came to be. So with that, I think we'll just jump into Timebomb. So I guess my first question on that is, so I don't know if it's like all bands or just like Tom fans have always been pretty like particular and aware of what the opener is on an album, whether that's from the Blink days and the Angels. It always seems to be a topic of excitement. So I guess what went into choosing an opener to kind of set the tone for Lifeforms, and what, in your opinion, makes Timebomb like a great opener for this album in particular?
Well, this is actually one of the few point of contentions me and Tom had, because originally I was like, when are we going to get together to do the sequence and this and that? And he's like, oh, it's done already. I already sent it off to this and that. I'm like, whoa. Wait. I mean, we got to discuss this. He goes, no, I like it. And I think we ended up changing two things, but I thought the album should have started with Restless Souls. It just sounds like something like that you would have put on and it would have been like, whoa, what's this?
Yeah.
And that song particularly has a lot of new directions, if you will, but I think it's also probably the closest thing that you would have to maybe past Angels tracks.
You're talking about Restless Souls.
Restless Souls.
Yeah.
But Tom was like, no, Timebomb. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. I'm not going to win them all, and I shouldn't win them all.
Yeah.
So cool. I was like, all right, fine. I'm not going to, whatever. Maybe I'm just too close to this thing. And you're always wondering, like, is this thing even good?
Right, right.
Especially after working on this thing for 3 years, like
you get used to it.
I won't say we've been working on all these same songs for 3 years. I mean, Timebomb probably came down the pike after the last Angels tour.
Okay.
The one in the fall. And
there's one fall, and then I want to say
no, that was it. There was
December.
Supposed to be other dates, but
true. Yeah.
Tom's voice went out, and then we rescheduled, and then COVID.
Sure.
And then COVID for everyone.
Exactly.
So I think Tom was really exhilarated and motivated by the live show and, being back in front of a crowd and all of the lights and all that stuff. And Tom's a very like visceral person. It's all about a mood, a feeling, like whatnot. So
it's an experience.
He wanted to write something that he's like, I want to write something that like it starts at the festival and it's just like crazy lights and like people just start like getting into it, like something that's just like really tantalizing and just gets you in a groove, almost like in a trance, and then just kind of like goes off into something else that we may have done, but just something that's just like whatever. So that it kind of just started with the intro, and that's about as far as we got for like the first couple days, was just putting that intro together, rewriting the words, just figuring out what it was going to be. And I'm like, okay, so we're about 40 seconds into the song. Like, now what are we where are we going? What are we doing?
Yeah, I actually had that kind of goes on to one of my other questions is the lyrics on this song particularly is probably one of my favorite lyrics on the album is that part where he says revenge doesn't work if we're laughing. I feel like that would make like a great t-shirt. But it's just one of those lyrics that really stood out to me in this song. Do those kind of constantly evolve as the song evolves instrumentally, or is it like he's got a pretty good idea and you have a pretty good idea of what's going to sound and it's just a matter of layering on the lyrics? Or does it kind of take a different tone sometimes where a lyric may change, so now we kind of want to change the sound as well?
Lyrics are always changing.
Okay.
So, I mean, we'll have like, usually what he'll do is he'll write a verse, a pre-chorus if there's a pre-chorus, and a chorus. And then we'll just kind of like, for the time being, just pull the first verse lyrics and put them in the second verse and just kind of see how the whole, to the point where we can have a whole full structure, and we try to get it as far as we can. And then once we're good with the structure of the song, the feel of the song, everything, then we start jumping into, rewriting more lyrics but because this album took so long, a lot of the lyrics ended up getting rewritten over and over and over and over. And it's not because of, there's just some things you sometimes write and you think they're clever, and then after a month or two, you're just kind of like, that's
as cool as I thought it would be. I thought it was.
Or oh my God, this would be way better if we said this or whatnot. And lyrics are pretty much Tom's, all Tom. I mean,
you're not like, hey, what about this word or something?
Well, so he'll come up with all the lyrics, and then I don't ask for a lyric sheet. I don't ask for anything. Like, I want to be surprised. I don't want to be reading along while he's singing and whatnot.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll be like, wait, what are you saying here? and it's like, okay, well, that's not what it sounds like.
Yeah.
So we got to like work on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that. But I really get involved in the lyrics when something's not singing well. Like, if it just kind of sounds jumbled or rhythmically it sounds weird, offer some sort of change there, and we work well there. And the only thing about lyrics with me is lyrics are so subjective. So it's like, who's to say what you might think is great, I might think is like, all right, fine. It's not that big of a deal, But I definitely do voice my opinion when I hear a lyric that's like,
doesn't fit.
Like that's just like, that's not cool. Like, it just sounds so, it's too on the nose or whatever. And, then we get into discussion of like, all right, well, what do you think it should be? And it's like, we both sit down,
you're coming from.
And we both just start spitballing. I'll be like, blah, 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 blah. And he'll be like, okay. Ooh, I didn't think about that. Well, now that I hear that, what if we do da 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 da?
Yeah,
and
it's kind of
okay,
evolves.
and it kind of just evolves.
Cool.
In that sort of sense.
Yeah, that's super cool. Another thing in Timebomb too is Alon's vocals seem more prevalent in kind of the background, his background vocals when he's singing there. In even the overall album, I feel like we hear a lot more of Alon in the background and singing backing vocals. Would you agree that this is more prevalent on this album than the Dreamwalker? And was that something you guys kind of almost premeditated coming into the album, or did it just work out that way that like, hey, this sounds really good, having a fuller kind of backing vocal to harmonize with Tom?
No, Alon did most of the backing vocals and harmonies and stuff on the Dreamwalker
okay.
too.
Yeah, I don't know, for whatever
that's
reason.
That's where people are like,
one,
oh my God, like Alon. And it's like, I mean, the harmonies might be more up in the mix.
Sure, maybe that's what it is.
But it's really weird. There are Alon and Tom's voice, even though they're very distinctly different, they blend in a very interesting way where sometimes you can't even tell.
Yeah, you really got to listen. Yeah. Because I can never
I always
tell
thought like
okay.
the go at the end of Kiss and Tell. That's just like it cuts off and it just ends on "Let her go."
Yeah,
that to me sounds like Alon, but it's Tom.
Yeah, yeah. I assume
just on Tom. That one word, I'm like,
right. Yeah, it's hard to tell if it's Alon or if it's Tom pitched higher, right? That's why I'm always like, is it? Yeah,
no, I'll never I'll never pitch them up.
Okay.
Or do any sort of like their voice is their voice, so it's like let them be.
Yeah. Cool.
But no, I mean that's one of Alon's strong suits is his ability to harmonize and come up with parts and hear different melodies, especially different melodies to what Tom is. Usually comes up with. So I think that's where things do get interesting. And I think Tom has completely embraced that. Tom has been like, now we're going to be kind of jumping along to stuff, but Euphoria, like,
that was the next song. So good segue.
Tom was like, I want like these big, like Queen harmonies, like in the verses, like emphasizing like the last word. So it's like, all right, Alon, time to go stack,
Yep. So
16 or 24 tracks.
Yeah, right. It sounds great. I love the fullness of it. So on Euphoria, speaking of that song, that's probably my favorite song on the whole album. It's a top Angels song for me ever, honestly.
Awesome.
And I thought maybe it was just when it first came out, I was really excited about it, but the more I listen to it, it keeps getting better and better. It's not one that kind of flashed early and then dies off. I enjoy it more and more. So that intro, I think, has that kind of unmistakable Rush kind of spacey synth going on. Was that a nod to that era and maybe even that band, or was just a sound he was looking for, that kind of spacey?
Not so much the intro, but it's when it goes don beam.
Yeah. That's what I meant.
It's like Tom is like, I don't know, that the only song I think Tom knows of Rush is Tom Sawyer.
Yeah.
So it's always like, we need that Tom Sawyer like filter synth, and so he always wants that. So oddly enough, the rough title for Euphoria was No Rush.
Oh, funny.
And I don't know why the no was there.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. I just sometimes make titles that are just like, okay, it's not Rush. Okay, no Rush.
Yeah.
Whatever. Funny. So, but yeah, it's funny because I feel like he's used that in so many, like I feel on Neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
whatever that first single was from Neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After Midnight.
Yeah. No, the one before After Midnight.
Yeah.
But whatever.
I know what you're talking about.
And then there was also one on the Dreamwalker that had that same like vibe thing going on. So it was like, okay. So the intro, not so much. Tom loves intros. Like I don't know what it is about.
They used to be really long.
No, I know, but long. I think what happens is like he's like, let's record. I'm like, okay. So I like walk into the studio and I'm like, all right, what are we doing? He's like, I don't know. Let's just start throwing stuff into the air, which usually ends up becoming like some sort of an intro, you know, and then like that intro inspires him for the rest of the song.
It's kind of U2-esque in a sense, that kind of, well, at least the older ones, those long intros with the delay and all that. Kind of.
But yeah, I mean, so we just built that, and then he wanted something that was kind of a nod to Boxcar Racer, and that's kind of where the main riff comes from.
Kind of grittiness.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, let's go from like this smaller electronic thing and go into this huge guitars and heavy big drums and whatnot.
Yeah. The verse and the chorus honestly could be two different songs, which as a producer and that must be somewhat difficult to mesh together. I think it works really great. Is it difficult to do that when it's kind of a very different sounding verse towards the chorus?
Well, this song in particular was one of those songs where we maybe had 3 or 4 different versions of the chorus. Like, and I'm talking like completely different stylistically. At one point, the pre-chorus, he came in with the pre-chorus. He's like, oh, this is the new chorus. I'm like, that's not a chorus. That to me sounds like
I feel like the chorus now almost could be a pre-chorus as well, don't you think?
It would be way too long.
Yeah.
That was a pre-chorus. But I was just kind of like, but it kind of shocked me because like when he came in with the pre-chorus chords, I was like, that is, a lot of people may have think like, oh, I hear a lot of Ilan influence on this. And it's no, that was actually Tom.
Sure.
And it was a shocker. And I then, you know, to me, it kind of felt like the first thing I heard when he kind of came in with those things was Led Zeppelin's Kashmir. And so I was like, oh, let me throw these like Mellotron strings on there. And then we kind of like built that out. And I'm like, yeah, but it still needs to go into something else. So we started writing one version of the chorus. It wasn't doing it. Another version of the chorus. It wasn't doing it. And then we landed on this chorus and he's like, what if just everything disappears? Like, it's just like a wall of synths and this and that. So we completely took out drums and everything.
Yeah.
And then the vocal melody was there. I'm like, well, I don't think it's a matter of taking out the drums. I just think it's a matter of maybe like making them a little bit more sporadic, you know? So then that whole thing developed and we were like, great, we got it. And then we had the third chorus was kind of the same thing as the other 2 choruses, and then he was just like, what if we just went like up tempo, like double tone at the end?
I was going to ask you about that.
That's actually, I think that'd be kind of cool.
So good, man. That's probably what makes it for me, honestly, because it has that build up, and then when you hit that last chorus, it's like everything. You get the whole song at once, and it was right. It really came through hard. That was my favorite part about it. So yeah, I was going to ask about that too.
And that's part of like what I was going back towards is like when, you know, we're literally writing the song, like a lot of when we do Angels albums, there's stuff that sticks on there from like the demo portion of like, we were just writing it. Like that just happened. We'll keep it. I don't care if it's a sound,
it's good.
certain guitar part, like, so when we're recording, like, we keep everything. But that being said, there's also times where you're going and, you know, you're copying and pasting parts of the song throughout just so that you can kind of get the semblance of like what does it need. And then my job, and one thing I like to do is like, okay, what sets verse 1 apart from verse 2? What sets chorus 1 apart from chorus 2? And you know, so that there's always something new coming in and something
it's not just
extra. Yeah, so because there are a ton of people that will just sit there and copy and paste like the same exact vocal, the same exact melody, this and that. So I think we're a little bit more conscious about that this time around. Like, okay, let's move forward.
I think it definitely came through on these songs. It's like I said, it's kind of this ride that, like, even if I watched some of like the reaction videos on YouTube, and they're like, okay, where is this going? Where is it going to go? What's next? And it's like, you don't know. And that's what makes it so fun. But on Euphoria too, I know Tom had once mentioned like the topic of it kind of touches on like toxic masculinity, which I didn't catch at first, but then listening back, like, makes a ton of sense. Did you kind of know the topic of the song going into it, or is that just, again, with the lyrics all kind of on his side, and the music stands alone with what you're trying to do with it?
I didn't get, like, I don't think Tom kind of knows.
Okay.
Like where things are going until they're there, and then he's just like, it's almost like he just like vomits onto a page.
Sure.
Like,
so it's not like, hey, I want this topic, so I need it to kind of sound strong and powerful. It's none of that.
Yeah, well,
really.
It's just like he'll have like 1 line or 2 line, and then he'll go, you know, sometimes those first lines come out almost subconsciously in a way. It's whatever the music makes you want to make you feel, or however, what mood he's in when he gets in. And so it's like, that song was probably the 3rd song that we kind of started working on. So we had Rebel Girl, which was kind of like cutesy. Then, you know, we went to Kiss and Tell, and then we went to this. I'm just like, oh my God, all these songs are about girls. Like,
yeah.
I'm like, I get it, dude. You're in love again. I get it.
Yeah.
And so I thought like this was him kind of like being flirty, like, get on your knees, we're gonna play tonight.
That's how I took it at first. I was like, this is kind of like a sexual song, you know? It's like,
and I'm like, and I don't think it was until he got into to writing that chorus when we actually got it that that things kind of clicked, and then it was a matter of going back and changing other lines here and there to kind of like fit.
Right.
So it's like it's this ongoing process where you don't know what you have until you're able to like kind of hear hear it
like,
back.
Yeah, this would make a lot of sense.
And then you go back and you start tweaking stuff and whatnot. But I thought it was a very interesting point of view. And I think especially in kind of the culture that we're in right now, where it's like, I'm like, can you really just say like, get on your knees, we're going to play tonight? Like,
yeah.
I'm like, is that cool? Are people going to be bummed on you?
In today's culture, right? Like,
like, and I mean, Tom comes from like, I mean, I don't even know how Blink-182 would have like functioned. Like, 2000.
I've had discussions with people about that. I'm not sure how that would have gone in today's day and age.
And I mean, we still have like, he still has that sense of humor.
Sure.
But, but it's about being like more aware of like, all right, maybe,
like the VMAs when they brought up like 50 little people.
Little people. Yes, little people.
I don't think that would have flown today.
Yeah.
So getting into Spellbound, again, just a complete 180, right, from the prior song. Yeah. And really the first 2 songs. So how did this one kind of come to fruition? And as you're producing it, writing it, did you realize it would kind of be a gamble to put a song like this on the album, much less the first 3 tracks, because it's kind of that to kind of give the listener that broad of a taste immediately, was that kind of discussed or as maybe a gamble, or was that something you guys knew, like, this is gonna be awesome and here's how it's gonna go?
Not really, but I will say this. So that song is interesting because when we were doing the scoring for Unidentified.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So what ends up happening a lot of times when we're scoring is Tom will be like, this is a feeling, this is a vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Go do it. I'll come back with something. He'll listen to it and be like, okay, great, cool. Because with the scoring stuff, especially with a TV show or a movie or whatnot, he's got so many different roles that he can't be everything to everyone. Right. He can't be the producer, the director, like on camera, like what's the next, on top of that, the whole business aspect of the whole thing, like dealing with the network and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So we have that relationship where I kind of know where his mind goes and the things that he's connected to, the things he likes. I know the things that he doesn't like.
Yeah.
So it's like,
don't even attempt.
Well, no, I attempt, but whatever. Well, I have to sometimes be like, come on, we got to move forward.
Yeah.
You got to have your broccoli. That kind of a thing. So I was off at my studio here, and it was a very interesting experience scoring, and at that point, because it was just a matter of like, do what you want. There's no box. So we only have to kind of fill out the mood, and everything was in the box, meaning that we'd do everything electronically unless there was a guitar part or something. And just in case we needed to keep things malleable so that if we wanted to speed it up or, shorten it, this and that, it's not a matter of re-recording all the time. So this was a thing that I was writing for a specific scene, and then it just kind of started. I just started keep going and kept going and kept going and kept going. I'm like, this is not for a score. This is a song.
Yeah, it's too good to have the background of Unidentified or something, right?
Well, yeah, that's. I was just like, wait, this is. So I took this video, which I've actually posted on my Instagram. When Spellbound came out, I'm like, here's, Spellbound's out. Check this out. This was the actual video I sent to Tom of the song. And it's literally verbatim, the drums, the synths, everything. And I'm like, you're welcome. Here's your next single. And he's like, dude, that's so good. He's like, let's definitely turn that into a song. And I'm like, all right, cool. Now, we didn't get started on that song until we were probably 7 or 8 songs in. And it was kind of at a point where we're like, all right, I think we have our up-tempo songs. We have our this. It's like we need something that's a little bit more down-tempo. That's more chill. And this kind of, it doesn't feel to me like it doesn't fit on the record because we've hit so many of our influences, whether it be New Order, and this to me felt like it'd be in a Depeche Mode world.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, it's definitely, that guitar tone is clear Depeche Mode, right?
Yeah.
Kind of hollow echo.
Yeah. So it didn't feel like a left turn. And then when you came up with the chorus melody, all I did was we shifted one of the notes down. That kind of gave it a major minor situation. And to me, I was like, that's so cool. It reminds me of Duran Duran. Something that would have, and not 80s Duran Duran, but I'm thinking Ordinary World, the stuff that they were kind of doing on their second resurgence, you know?
Yeah.
And I thought that was, I'm like, this is a cool blend, going from here to there.
Then the song, sorry.
the song was supposed to be like completely electronic.
Yeah.
And then we sent it off to Elon when we had verse, chorus pretty much. And he then wrote the bridge. But another thing that he did was he had live drums come in right at the end of the first chorus.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's a super cool fill at the end there.
Yeah, and then that became an internal debate because we had that song around for probably a month and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're just like, oh, if we put like real drums in there, like, is it just going to take away from the electronic vibe of it? And I'm like, not really. I mean, it's like, you still and Elon was just kind of like, if we don't have the drums come in there, then the song just feels stale.
Right. It gives some life there at the end.
It's such a simple beat that it's like, it needs something to like keep it going. And
yeah,
I think it definitely gave the song a bigger groove. And so I think the more people got used to that version, it was just kind of like, oh yeah, okay.
You don't really think about it.
We definitely need it.
Yeah. So with your and Elon's especially background and influences being such like a classic rock, 70s rock, 60s, where does that kind of aptitude and acumen for electronics come from with you guys? Is that just from messing around in the studio, or is that something you guys learned? I mean, I know he spent a lot of time with Nine Inch Nails, and they're pretty heavy with their industrial sound and that sort of thing. Does that come from that at all? It just doesn't fit kind of his influence background.
Yeah. So Elon started getting into electronics oddly like 2 months before he joined Nine Inch Nails.
Oh, funny. Yeah. Good timing.
And yeah, it was actually like insane timing.
Yeah.
And so I think the biggest leap from Elon's, like, in terms of Elon, because being his older brother, I've always like, like, you should listen to this. You would love this.
Yeah.
So I think his first leap into like what we would call like modern music would have been Radiohead.
Okay.
And so with Radiohead, he was like, these sounds are incredible. Like I want to get into that kind of stuff. I'm like, well, if you think this stuff is incredible, like you need to check out Nine Inch Nails. So I started getting him into like Nine Inch Nails, and literally 2 weeks later,
no way,
when he got the email from Trent, and it's like, well, this is weird.
Even that kind of snare effect on Spellbound kind of sounds like Closer. It's not quite the same tone, but that kind of, I just thought that after a couple times of hearing it, it sounds similar to that kind of same effect that they have on Closer.
Yeah, it's a little bit there. And that was probably done subconsciously.
Okay. So I'm sure if you grabbed that from there and then tweaked it a bit, or if it was
no. Nope. That's not, because then you get into a whole other world of legal situations.
Oh, sure, yeah, it's not that close, but I mean, like you said, kind of mentally, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that honestly wasn't even the intention. I think what ended just happening is that I wanted it's probably a sample from a drum machine, and it's just like compressed, and I just compressed it and made it into a one shot, and then it's done.
Yeah,
it's one that I had made a while back when I was producing some stuff for somebody else, and and we never ended up using it, or I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
So I just kind of had it. So I was just like, okay, cool. We got this. But yeah, so Elon got into electronics, and that was kind of the segue. It was like Radiohead into Nine Inch Nails. That kind of suit the whole electronic thing. And while he was on his first tour with Nine Inch Nails was him picking Trent Sprayman, like, hey, what synth should I get? And
for sure.
When Ilan dives into something, he goes deep. Like he is an obsessive human being. Yeah. So it's like he took a deep dive into synthesis and where he's like, he'll pull up a synth and make his own sounds. Whereas I'm more of a, I'll start scrolling through presets until I hear something that's close to what I want to hear. And then I'll start tweaking with like the parameters.
Funny. I have a video where I actually dubbed over the intro to Diary to the opening scene of The Social Network. And like it fits so great. And that was obviously Trent Reznor and Attic Strauss who did that score. And I'm like, man, when Ilan kind of redid some of those songs and the Stomping the Phantom Brake Pedal and all that stuff, I'm like, man, this is pretty heavy Nine Inch Nails similarities here, which is awesome. Yeah. So I was automatically excited for him to come on board.
Trent is incredible with synth. He's got incredible taste. I mean, even just listening to the new Halsey record that he produced.
I saw you produced. I haven't heard it yet though. Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Like I'm just like I'm listening to Halsey.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's really good. And I really do feel like I think he's got great taste when it comes to those things. So when Ilan joined Angels and Airwaves, Tom had a bunch of different synths and whatnot, but I mean, the one synth that he would keep going back is his Roland Phantom, which is like, it's kind of a workstation. So it's got like strings and trumpets and like just pretty generic sounds. So I think that's been a big difference between when we started working with Tom to previously, is that we were like, we're not going to sit there and scroll through a Roland synth and where you can literally like play a sound and be like, oh my God, that's the sound from Alphaville's Forever Young. Oh my God, that's the sound from, this or so it's like, let's take a little bit more ownership.
Yeah. So even the next song to you, so hopping into No More Guns, a pretty big change now from Spellbound that kind of picks it back up, picks the tempo back up. And I know you kind of said a lot of it wasn't like, hey, let's make a song like this or that, but I think a lot of people definitely hear kind of that Brit punk sound on this, whether it's the Ramones or something like that, with kind of the that guitar tone and the drums are a little more garage bandy than some of the other songs. Was that another thing where Tom said, hey, I want this sound? Can you guys make that happen, or can we get close to that?
That song happened. Tom came in one day and he's like, I want to write a song like the Who's Your Generation. I mean, my generation. The working title for the song was Your Generation.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And so he kind of came up with this riff and whatnot. And the riff is actually not in the song.
Oh, really?
Like, did not make it, but everything else. So this song was hard to hone in the vibe and make it right and make it special and make it interesting and not just make it like, here's this song.
Yeah.
So when he had the riff that he came into it, I was driving home and I was like, this doesn't sound like The Who. It sounds like the Monkees. And it was Last Train to Clarksville. I sent it to Tom. I'm like, this is what the song reminds me of. He's like, dude, that's so cool. Yeah. And I was just like, he's like, dude, that's so cool. I'm like, yeah, but you wanted to go for this and we're ending up here. And I was like, I don't want to just keep going with this. Oh, and as we were writing it, you know, it was always like my generation, The Who, but then we were like also Iggy Pop's Lust for Life. But like, how many bands have done like let's do Lust for Life? You know, like boom, jump,
there's entire Green Day albums of that, right?
Right. Well, and not only that, you then run into like Jet had the "Are You Gonna Be My Girl?" So I was like, okay, how are we gonna make this feel different and good? And this one took the most amount of massaging to like this one was one of the few songs where I was like, we're not working on the song until the three of us are in a room together.
Just too hard to come at it. Yeah,
because there's nothing worse than like rock and roll being done wrong.
Sure,
it could sound so cheap and so hokey, right? And I'm like, this song shouldn't sound good. It should just sound like cheap and gritty, and it should have an attitude to it. And when Tom started singing his ideas for the verses, I was referencing like pub music, like British pub music.
I was thinking. Like, it kind of sounds like a
bar. It's got to have like some snotty, like fuck you kind of like mentality, like fuck off in, like that kind of like whole vibe. And we finally got it to a point where it felt right. It had a swing. It didn't feel like any of these other songs.
Yeah.
And I think it ended up in a good place. And then Tom came in with the lyrics. And I think that was a little bit of another bit of like, are people going to understand that you're being sarcastic?
Right. I was going to say, it's kind of a sarcastic take against gun violence.
I'm like, is it a cool thing to be sarcastic about something that's, you know, in a weird way, it's a epidemic in this country.
Right. Yeah.
And it's such a dark topic. It's something that's so polarizing where people's like, oh, we should have guns. And it's just like, do you really need an AR-15? Like,
right.
I mean, you can have your own political views as to, you know, why and what, but sometimes people don't understand sarcasm.
Right. Yeah. That was one of my questions. Like, you know, it's clearly from almost the point of view of a gun happy person, right? Like, hey, let's go have fun and all this stuff. But do you think that song happens if it weren't for the pandemic to kind of let that side of our country breathe a little bit? I'm just wondering if it weren't for the pandemic and time to kind of think about different topics, and maybe we should attack or touch on some topics that are important for people. Do you think that song even happens still?
No. No. I'm saying it would have happened.
No, it would still happen.
Sans the pandemic. Because if you really want to think about it, with everybody being home and the schools being shut down, like you didn't really have any like mass shootings during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So my answer to that is no. Like if one thing good happened out of the pandemic is that there weren't school shootings.
Yeah, that calmed down a little bit
and stuff like that. So I don't think that had anything to do with it, but I think there was definitely some things where like Tom's maybe wanted to talk about certain things.
Sure.
And the vibe of the song definitely wasn't there.
Right. Yeah. It has nothing to do with the topic really.
Right. So I think this song kind of had a little bit more of that, like, okay, this might be that song where we can sit there and, you know, mouth off. But he did it in a very sarcastic way, which is just like, all right, well, let's just close our eyes and jump and see what happens.
Hope people pick up on that.
Yeah. But so far, so good. I haven't heard anything.
Yeah. No.
Like, this is.
I haven't either.
Promoting this and that.
I think most people got that from the people I've talked to anyway.
Well, thank God, because I can't give people the benefit of the doubt a lot of the time.
Yeah, if anything, it was like, oh, why get into politics? But then, it's if people know Tom and know his history, they can't possibly be shocked. But
there's always been an element of
that's why
politics and rebellion in Tom's lyrics. There's always been something. Now, has it gotten like super literal? No, but this is something you can get behind. I mean, he's got kids. He's got kids in high school, and as a parent, like, you're sitting there going, like, what's going on? Like, the worst that we would do is like light a firecracker or something, like, and
pull the fire alarm.
Yeah, it'd be like weird. It's like people are showing up, like people are that butthurt that they show up to school with like guns and just start shooting like randomly. It's like,
so getting into losing my mind, which also kind of touches on that topic, but I think this one perhaps will be best known for the music video. I think when that came out, it kind of brought that song to another level with the whole disco character and all that. So, but outside of that, my first reaction to that song is what it must have been like to be in the room when you guys were like recording that, especially just that first verse. And I'm curious if you guys kind of looked at each other at any point and be like, are we seriously doing this? And like, this is going to sound awesome. I think it sounds great, but I would imagine there was at some point kind of like a, wow, this is different. It's almost kind of that talking tone, and it's a dance song, and the chorus still has that kind of Angels vibe for sure. But I imagine at some point there was kind of like all right, we're doing this, or not so much.
So this is how on the nose we are because I have to be so blatantly on the nose to remember what song is what when we're working. So I'll put these titles. And so the name of this song was Disco, like Dis Company.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it started off kind of like with the bass line.
Yeah.
Tom kind of brought in a little bit of that bass line. And then I was like, we tweaked it to a point where it's like, oh, what if we did this? So we changed it. And then he's like, yeah, I kind of want like a disco beat under it, like something that's dancey and whatnot. Yeah. So the first version of that started off with the drums being like, traditional, like, that whole like thing. And then he wanted like, we had this different pre-chorus that he wanted to be kind of like somewhere between Motown and Uptown Funk. Okay. And I was like,
yeah.
And so that was always like, and then the chorus was went straight into like an Angels and Airwaves, Tom DeLonge, like chord progression.
Yeah.
And I was just like,
it's a lot.
It's not. So he's like, just follow me down the rabbit hole. And I'm like, okay. So then he played a synth line. That was like the main synth line that goes down, ba-da-da-boom, down. Yeah. And so at that point, he's like, I gotta go. I'm like, okay, cool. And I left that one synth line in, and then completely took everything else out, and then added the down, boom, down, boom.
Yeah.
Down.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't even until we recorded the drums that I was telling Alon, like, I have a few ideas for this song, so follow me down this rabbit hole and just do the exact sense. Yeah, I'm like, just do like dum bum dum bum 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 dum bum. Just like followed that melody more, and let's accent on those things. And then we ended up changing the guitars to follow those drums, and then I think that's when the chorus kind of like came together. But I skipped over the whole part. So we had a completely different verse.
Yeah.
And Tom came in and he's like, I think I want to take the drums out and do like some sort of like cool sounding loop, and then do something that's more like, and he started singing the, and I was like, huh? And he was just like, just do a loop. I got to do a phone call. And so I just started getting like all weird, and
the wood block sound.
Yeah, like that whole loop did not change from that day on.
Funny.
Like it was like boom, boom, boom,
yeah,
all those things. And he did the vocal, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. Let's double it and make it like super, super, super tight. And what I want to do is I want to move one vocal all the way to the left and your other double all the way to the right. So it's just this super stereo thing. And then he actually came up with the harmonies for this one. And then I had Elon kind of take it from there, which is super hard because at that point and it's so in your face that I have to have Elon be like right on Tom's timing and Tom's pronunciation, because you want it to just sound like it's one thing. And it just kind of worked. And Elon actually came back when he sent back the song with all the different percussion that's in the pre-chorus. That's did. And I was like, yeah, a little bit of a Michael Jackson vibe. If you guys don't like it, don't worry about it. I just thought it was funny. I'm like, no, that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
So the second verse was then supposed to be, or what's actually verse 3 after the first chorus, because it stops with the 808. That song was going back into the mellow vibe, but it just didn't feel right. So that's something that was worked on. And I think we ended up in a cool place. Yeah. So now the whole song kind of, it felt like going back to the whole mellow thing after the big chorus that just kind of had this like John Hughes movie feel. Yeah. You know, it's like a Breakfast Club kind of like
the fist in the air. Yeah.
Exactly. Going back to something, I was like, okay, so we put the loop in. I'm like, it'd be interesting if Elon kind of played drums around the loop. Now that the drums were in and introduced, and the lyrics for that one for that verse were probably rewritten a couple times. Yeah. And what I thought was really cool about the song is this song wouldn't have happened without the pandemic lyrically.
Sure.
And
it's kind of a reflection on what the
heck's going on. I'm like, what a crazy time to be alive. Like,
yeah, for sure.
This is insane. Like, there's this pandemic happening. Like, politics is so at the forefront of our culture. Like, it's become this thing that's just constantly in your face. It's like a TV show, or like everybody's talking about it, and it's so polarizing.
It's surreal. So, if you explain what was happening to someone 10 years ago, they'd be like, get out of here. No way.
Yeah.
So that bass line, though, did you write that in that intro, or was that Elon? Or?
No, that started off with the dun-dun-dun-dun-dun was Tom, and then the dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, and then that was me.
Okay, I got you.
So those two things were kind of just like.
Did Matt record all the bass for this album, or
Matt recorded all the bass?
Did he write any of it?
He wrote some stuff. Elon, the bass on the record, because we're moving so quick, is either me or Lon.
Sure.
Usually.
Yeah.
And I'll sometimes just lay down like a basic version of it, and then Elon kind of gets in there and starts putting all these little fills. And then when it came time to recording, then that was an opportunity for me to work with Matt, which is like the first time we actually worked together in the studio.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, hey, try this. Or there's stuff where he's like, dude, that little bass fill, we're going to totally keep. Like, I think Elon, they geek off so much, like as bass players. Sure. Like, he's like, that's so tasty. Like, I need to keep it. But Matt did bring a lot of his own things to the record, or I'd be hearing something a certain way, and then we'd be going back and forth, and whatnot. So, but yeah, he ended up playing it.
So going to automatic, on this one, pretty much from that first note, we kind of hear that Cure guitar tone right off the bat. I think everyone associates it with that right away. I'm assuming, Tom kind of wanted a song with that sound, and given the fact that he's such a fan and that band is so like near and dear to his heart, does that kind of put any added pressure on you to get that right? I mean, is that one of his songs that he's like, I really want to, kind of like how you said, you don't want to screw up a rock song. I imagine for Tom, he doesn't want to screw up a Cure sounding song. Does that kind of put some pressure on you at all to get that one right for sure?
Well, so this song was probably the quickest song that was written on the record.
Yeah.
It was like boom, 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 boom.
Mm-hmm.
Send it to Elon, got it back, and didn't change. It was just like done. Like it was quick. And so the seed for this song was Tom came in and was like, I want to write a song that kind of has like the vibe like Melt With You.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. So he's like, I just wanted to be like acoustic guitars and like the drums and just kind of have like that Melt With You kind of vibe.
Uh-huh.
And I started feeling like it was sounding too much in that world. So he then added the synth in the beginning that's kind of like synth pad, and then that to me completely triggered the Cure.
Uh-huh.
And then I was listening to it, and I'm like, okay, now it kind of like has a Cure vibe. Like, is it too Cure?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, what if we did more of like a New Order type, line and sound? And that's where the guitar riff kind of came in. And so it becomes this hodgepodge of like where your influences on your sleeve, but don't copy. Like try to like pay homage, but in trying to do something new.
Right. Don't just rip it off, but respect that. Yeah, this is
it's like influence of mine. Nobody wants Tom DeLonge to rewrite Melt With You.
Sure.
It's like if you want to cover it, go for it.
Yeah.
But they don't want to hear like that. But a lot of the time my job is like, how do we take something that's coming from here and make it into something completely different and fresh and new? And I think we landed on it. It definitely pays homage to those bands, but it's at the same time, it's not too far off from something like Everything's Magic.
Yeah, it's still distinctly Angels. Like, you could play that and be like, yeah, that belongs on their, catalog. It's not like, whoa, what is that that they just tried?
Exactly.
So speaking of that, like I think that was probably one of the most popular songs that the overall fan base was just really excited for and really got behind. Like there wasn't any kind of, I think it's good, I think it's okay. Like it was pretty much consensus, an awesome song. is there a reason you guys kind of put that out last or later, rather than obviously not like when Rebel Girl was out, because it probably wasn't even created then, but once you guys had all the songs, what was the reasoning behind kind of keeping that almost last or towards the end?
There was no reason to keep it to the end, like, ooh, we got this ace in the hole or anything. One of the craziest things is like, we got to pick a single, right?
Yeah.
Because I come from the school of, we have to try to make every song the best song it could possibly be. I want to be able to make any song that we put on a record be a single. Now, what determines what a single is? Honestly, it's other people hearing your music and saying like, ooh, that's a great song.
Yeah.
Now, who's listening to your record and telling you like, oh, that's a great song? Because you can't put it out and say like, hey, public, what do you think?
Yeah.
So it's going to be like radio guys, or unless somebody's like completely stoked on Timebomb's going to be like the one, you know? And Tom wanted Timebomb to kind of come out first, but then it was like, no, label really, really, really likes Euphoria. It's like, okay, well, personally, I don't care what songs they put out.
Sure.
So the whole process of picking out like what songs were coming out were basically on like, what songs were we most excited for people to hear like first? What songs are going to be special? And then at the same time, if your album's coming out in September and the first song you put out is in late April, are you going to go with like the song you think is like the most exciting, like right away? Like
it's going to be kind of watered down by the time the album comes out.
I knew that Losing My Mind, and I think Losing My Mind is my favorite song from the record. I think I've come to that determination. I just think it's the most unique. I think it doesn't sound like anything else. I think it's a song that challenges the listener because it's so different. And I just knew that when that song came out, like it was either people are going to absolutely love it or they're going to fucking hate it. And a lot of people, I think when they first heard the song, I was like, what is this? Like, this is so whack, blah, 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 blah. And then 3 days later, people are like, actually, this song's really good.
Yeah, this song actually slaps, I think the video helped too, because everyone was like, what is this? And it was kind of that classic Tom humor. And paired with that song, it's just a fun song. And the video definitely, paired well with just a fun natured song about some pretty like gnarly stuff that's going on. But it definitely works.
Absolutely. And so it's one of those things, like, it's not really planned. Like, sure. I do like all the songs, but I think what works is for singles, if I'm going at it from a purely like music industry standpoint, is how does it match up with the songs that are on current radio's playlists? Because that's what's going to determine like whether a song gets played or not. People don't like radio people don't like to take chances, and especially not during the pandemic. They were just like, we got to play whatever we can to keep listeners engaged so that our advertisers don't bail on us. And it's like,
so and the whole method of cranking out, 7 singles basically before the album comes out, is that just something that comes of streaming these days? I mean, people aren't digesting albums like they used to. Is that a side product of the industry being on the streaming services where you crank out 7 out of your 10 songs as singles to kind of let them breathe and let them have their own moments to get those streams and everything? Or is that...
It's an unfortunate thing because playlisting has become, and mind you, I have two sides of my brain. I have like the manager side, which I no longer do because I've about had it with the industry mentality. And there's a artist side of it, but we're in a world now where playlisting is somewhat like the new radio, and the streaming services like stuff that's brand new. Hey, we got something that's brand new. So if I were to put out an album today, they will pick one song and that'll be on the playlist. And if I try to go put out another song from that record, from the same record, it's now no longer new. It's out.
Yeah.
So you don't get as much quote unquote playlisting love.
Sure.
You know, now did we have to do it 7 times? I don't know. I mean, probably could have put 4 songs out and whatnot, but we just live in a world where people consume things and they consume it so fast. And if you put out one song, like people want more. So it's like, and especially with this fan base, it's just like, it's like they want, come on, just put out the record now. And it's like, no, you don't understand. Like, we have to come out with the right artwork, of which the packaging is absolutely amazing. And
well,
I had nothing to do with
tour
it
right now, and you know, we want to tour the album, and there's a film that's coming, and all that stuff. So so jumping in to Restless Souls here. So I read, I think it was Tom who said it, that it's kind of a response to the Boxcar song "Letters to God," and then it's kind of a message from God, whatever that is, kind of back to humanity, kind of the reverse side of things. But it kind of, it seems to be right up the alley of kind of a true angel song, kind of from that hope and love perspective. And I think you may have even mentioned it was kind of a throwback to the love era at some point. Do you use, it
was not necessarily a throwback to the love era. And what's really weird and really funny is that, and this is not to toot my own horn or anything, but I actually wrote the vocal melody for the chorus. It was just something that I kept on hearing over and over and over. And it's funny when they're just like, oh, just Tom keeps on repeating himself and this and that. And it wasn't even like hearkening back to Angels and Airwaves at all. I just kept on hearing this, like the chords kept on bringing me this Madonna song. I'm Crazy for You.
Oh, yeah.
And if you listen to the chorus of that, you'll kind of hear a similarity in the melody.
I'll have to go back and check that out.
You'll hear a little bit of, and I'm giving away a weird secret, but it's like that's what kind of happens is that you're listening to an instrumental of a song, and you're just kind of like humming along, and melodies come into your head, and like that just stuck in my head. Like I was like, I think this is a chorus, and it's just like, then people are like, oh, it sounds like this angel song and that angel song. I'm like, why? Because we're emphasizing the bum 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 bum. Like it's like melodically, it doesn't sound like anything. It's not until you get to that we only did that you start getting a melody. And but no, it wasn't intentional. The only thing that I thought kind of felt like a nod to Angels was in the verses. There's like this like kabasa sound that kind of sounds like the hand claps from Everything's Magic.
So kind of discussing that part too, I know this is kind of a question that a lot of people ask or discuss kind of within the fandom, but how would you describe kind of the difference between your producing with Elon and that sort of process versus what you know about how it was with like Critter when he was producing, and what is the kind of big difference between maybe how you guys attack a song?
I don't know much about Tom's process with Critter. Like, it's not something that we ever like
replicated, or he's not trying to do that again.
No, I think so. When Elon first joined the band, we Love 2 had just been done, so there was no musical fingerprint for Elon, even though Tom was like wanted Elon in the band because he was a songwriter, right?
Yeah.
And he was looking forward to, all right, this is going to be interesting. Like, you know, because before then it's like Tom pretty much did everything, you know, and it'd be like, you know, that's that. So I don't know. So we ended up doing, so I told Elon, I'm like, we should, just so you can kind of say like, introduce yourself to the fan base. Like, it'd be interesting if you did a remix of one of the songs and, you know, they can put it out for free and whatnot. And I think the first remix that we did was for Surrender or Anxiety. And Tom was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, you should do this for all the songs and we'll call it like Love Reimagined and this and that.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay. And he's like, and then he asked, like, who did this? Like, who'd you record it with? Like, do you just do it all on your own? He's like, no, my brother engineered and we kind of like worked together on that thing. He's like, fuck, it just sounds so cool and like so different. Like, I think it'd be like a great addition. Like, maybe like he should, you know, engineer a few of the songs on the next record. And then that way there's like a little bit of a new thing.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, you know, Critter do like most of the record and then like Aaron can do a few songs and we'll just have something different. And then unfortunately, you know, a month and a half later, Critter passed away. And so Tom called Elon, was like, hey, do you know any guys in San Diego that could handle being like an engineer and work with the band? And Elon's like, honestly, Aaron, like, that's your dude. And that's kind of like when Tom and I started talking. And I think Tom knew that Elon's musical style was completely different to his. And that's when me and Tom started bonding, because I musically am the bridge between Tom and Elon. Yeah. Like, I come from, you know, I grew up watching MTV, like literally from the cradle to, and this is when MTV was like good and real videos, and played, like, and I would just sit there and listen, and you'd have all these like cool and diverse bands. So I was aware of that. And then obviously going into middle school and high school and all that stuff is when like the whole like new school punk started kind of happening. You had your Lagwagons, No Effects, like Descendants, like Epitaph Records became like Epitaph, right? And then that started getting me into, you know, going to go see those shows, which is when I heard Blink and I was like, man, they're so shitty, they're so bad, but they always had like the best looking girls at their shows, you know. And then, you know, Dude Ranch came out and I was like, all right, getting better. And then Enema came out, it's like, all right, they're they're growing. And then so me and Tom musically are very, very, very compatible. And like, he knows I translate for Elon to Tom, and I translate from Tom to Elon. Sure. And it just kind of like that bridge. But I mean, my approach to producing or mixing or whatever I do is try to make the best version of what the artist is coming to you with. Yeah. I'm not going to sit there and put my fingerprint. And I don't really think I have a fingerprint, because if you listen to my production between Angels and Airwaves and the New Regime with the lawn stuff, it's like completely different. And it's just like, how do I make the artist's vision come to fruition? And I just have like simple rules. I am an artist in a sense. I just never been the guy who had my own band, wrote my own songs, sung my own songs, but I was definitely the guy who would help push songs along.
Sure.
For other people. And I think that's where me and Tom really clicked, because I was able to offer him a different perspective, and Ilan was able to bring in a different perspective. And now we kind of have three cooks in the kitchen, which in the beginning was just like, how do we do this? Because, Tom wanted Ilan to like, hey, write some songs and bring them to me. But then it was just like, Tom's like, I don't understand any of your songs. Not because the songs were complex or anything. But it's just Tom's
not where he's
used to hearing. So Tom would bring a song, and then Ilan would completely take it apart and put it back together with different chords and this and that. And Tom would be like, ooh, that's cool. So that's kind of how we stumbled upon that. So how we work.
I
don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does.
So
it does.
what the process is.
Yeah, no, very cool. So moving along to the next track, Rebel Girl, and I mean, this thing feels like it was released forever ago, right? It's been a very long time. But one of the things about this one that really stuck out to me is how it felt live. So I went to a couple shows on that fall tour, and I feel like live, the song just hits way harder, and it just really works well on stage. And I was just curious if when you guys are recording, do you have that in mind at all, like a presence of a live performance, or is it strictly geared towards the listening experience at home?
I come from the school of thought that music on a record is one interpretation of the song, and music live can be reinterpreted a little bit different, because you have a lot more leeway with a record in terms of like getting the exact right song. And a lot of the times what you're going to run into with live performances is that it's going to be a little bit more raw and a little bit rougher around the edges. So no, we weren't thinking about, how's this song going to come out live? It was like, how's this song going to sound on the record? And are we like checking off the boxes of where we want it to be and what we want it to sound like? And there's a vibe coming across, this and that. Then the band starts rehearsing, and it's like, all right,
this one's good.
Let's go for it, and let's see how it feels. And to be honest, like, I was just kind of like, it sounds cool, Yeah. And there's a lot of times where songs will be sped up for live, because there is that adrenaline when you're at a show, and it's like, all right, let's bump this one up like 5 BPM or whatever. And it'll give it a little bit of a different feel, but you want that. I mean, it's a different energy when you're listening to a record in your car driving, and you're all like kind of mellow and whatnot. And it's a different energy when you're a bunch of sweaty people around you, and maybe you had a few drinks in you, and like, you're just having a great time. Like,
I definitely thought that one was probably the most radio friendly as well. It sounded to me like it could be, a top 40 hit out of the songs on the record. I figured that one was probably the most radio friendly. Would you agree on that, or are there others that you'd put out in front of that?
I think it's radio friendly in the sense that it's akin to a 80s pop song.
Yeah.
Like it's maybe it would have been a massive hit in 1985. These days, it's like, who knows? It's like, the stuff I'm hearing on the radio these days is like literally like Taking Back Sunday with a trap beat, or like a Blink song with a trap beat behind it. And it's like, whoa, like, this is like insane to me. I would have never thought that was something that like what would be happening right now. But like I said, every song you work on, like I want it to be like, if people hear that song and they gravitate towards it, that it's ready to be a single if it's called upon to be a single.
Yeah.
Cool. That's it. And I could say that for No More Guns as well, even though it's gritty. Yeah. It's got a vibe. You know, it's like, even though to me that's like the least quote unquote produced or whatever, but it's not a song that's like off-putting in a way. Like it's crafted well.
It's a fun song.
Good arrangement, and it takes you on a little bit of a journey. It's a little bit of a left turn.
Yeah. So speaking of a vibe, Fire in a Nameless Town, I think is pretty moody right off the bat. It's obviously a different mood. And when I listen to that song, the verses almost give me like a really strong visual as a listener. You could almost see it almost picture like a movie or a film with that kind of playing in the background or something. If there was one song on this album that could fit the tone or the vibe of what that Monsters of California score is without giving too much away, what would it be? I would think it's this one. It almost kind of sounds like a Stranger Things or Monsters of California type vibe. Would you agree that this song, if anything, would fit with what that score is going to sound like?
Nope.
No. Okay.
You guys are going to be shocked by the score.
Interesting.
Because the score is very orchestral.
Interesting.
It's very orchestral or very electronic. But we haven't finished it yet, so I don't know where that score is gonna. I know the stuff we've been like. Tom's like completely pushed me because he'll be like, at the beginning, like I wasn't even. I was just on to like produce, engineer, and mix the score, and then Tom walks in. He's like, all right, so for this first scene, I'm kind of thinking like this, and he plays me this like version of like something from Jurassic Park, and I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like he's like, yeah, I just want like the cellos and like this and that, and like and I was like, dude, that's out of my wheelhouse. Funny. He's like, I'm like, maybe like that we should say that for more of like Ilan, because Ilan can do anything, and he took a deep dive into orchestration and scoring and all that stuff. But Tom's impatient. He's like, he's like, dude, you can do it. Just figure it out. And I'm just like,
well, now I'm even more excited to hear this.
Yeah, I think it'll be a pleasant surprise, but I will say that the movie feels real.
Okay.
Like it feels like a movie that you'd watch and you'd be like, you wouldn't know that Tom made it unless you knew that Tom made it.
Okay. Cool.
I mean, you will definitely see like his humor in it.
Sure.
Right. But it feels like a very like Amblin type of like 80s.
It's even like Love. I mean, that film.
Yeah, I don't even know
Tom, right? So it's
I guess like that's like I said, that had just come out when Ilan had joined and went to this movie, and I'm like,
sure,
what is this? It's like
that layering of the vocals on Fire in a Nameless Town is super prominent. I know you do it throughout the album, but on that one is almost kind of the focal point at some points in that song. Is that just a massive layering on your part to get that sound?
Yes, but not on my part. I didn't do any vocals on there.
Well, I mean, like as a producer, you're taking
that one till the very end. We were never sure about the chorus.
Okay.
And what's actually there as the chorus was supposed to just be, to me, I always felt like background vocals.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until the very end where I took what was like the lead vocal track, if you will, and I muted all of the background vocals, and I turned that lead vocal into a lead vocal. And then, because it's actually, when we layered all the vocals, they were literally they were following the lead vocal the entire time. So it was literally you come in and it's like, boom, like you have this stack of like,
sure.
16 voices coming at you for the chorus. And then I was listening to Peter Gabriel's So a lot during that time. And I kind of was feeling that somewhat of that vibe.
Yeah.
Sure. And so In Your Eyes is one of my favorite songs of all times. And it was also like, kind of like, okay, how is that such a great chorus? But it kind of had that play between the background vocals and the lead vocal. And it kind of like blended into this one thing. And I think that's when I started chopping things up so that the interplay worked. And I was like, okay, I think we're in a great place. And it's really funny because you go from something that's like very Depeche Mode in the verses. It's actually very dark, I think, for Tom.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of eeriness to it.
And I was like, anytime we get into anything that's dark, I'm just like, yes, let's go there.
Yeah.
Anytime anything sounds like way too happy, I'm just like, like, I always like doing like, if something feels dark, I want to add some like poppiness to it. And if something feels poppy, I want to add darkness to it.
Yeah.
Like that's always like,
kind of bring it back.
Yeah. I don't want to make things too rich in either direction.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt good going into a chorus like that was a little bit more upbeat and it just felt right. And that was one of the songs where we didn't have any bass at all. And then I worked with Matt to like come up with like putting a little bit of that vibe in Your Eyes, like bass wise. And I think that kind of started giving it that feel.
Super cool. So last song got there, Kiss and Tell. Similar kind of the first track, the question I asked, the closer seems to be equally important. And I think when the track listing came out, a lot of the fans were surprised to see Kiss and Tell as the album's closer. Was that always the case, or was that also like the opener, kind of a point of contention amongst you to how are we going to end this? And kind of
like I said, I had that was never supposed to be a closer.
Okay.
Like sequencing was the absolute last thing that happened. And like I said, it was just something Tom like, this is what
it ends on go, I guess, right?
Which in the end, you're just kind of like, go.
That
all
makes
right,
sense.
cool.
Yeah,
like,
right.
But I never, you mentioned that, and that's like, I didn't even ever think about that.
Yeah. I thought like maybe, but that almost felt like too obvious.
No, I was like, right now that you bring it up, I'm like, that's actually kind of a cool way to end the record on just one voice,
Yeah, I noticed on that one live as well, Matt sings on that one. Did he sing on the record at all, or is that just something he does live?
No, he'll sing when you need it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like,
because I feel like he didn't sing in like,
no, he didn't sing on the record. No, but
like his past bands either, right?
I'm not sure, to be honest. And it's so weird because I was on a tour with him.
Well, Take It Back Sunday had the two singers already, so I just don't think he ever sang on that. But maybe.
So there you go. Well, there you bring up a great point. I think, he can do what he's doing, which is great.
Yeah, he's a great musician. Yeah.
So that's positive, and it works. So I think it's just a matter of like, there's times where Elon's like, I don't want to be singing during this part, so you take it if you can do it. And
kinda
when
repetitive.
if the three of them can sit there and sing, it's like, you want to try to like honor the song live as much as you can.
Sure.
Even though it you're going with a little bit more rough around the edges, vibe and whatnot. Cool. So you try to do as much as you can, and then there gets a point where there's just not enough people to replicate it, and it doesn't get done.
Right. So that kind of brings us to the end of the song list anyway, but I did just have a few quick questions overall, maybe some kind of like more rapid fire questions, but can you confirm if any, I mean, I assume songs didn't make the cut. We kind of heard some drum tracks online here and there that we can't really place to a certain song. Are some of those something we might see in a deluxe version, or can you confirm or deny that?
I don't know what will end up on a deluxe version, even though they're very well maybe. And Tom's talked about maybe putting some of the stuff from the score on the deluxe version.
Yep.
Towards the end of the record, we ended up recording 2 more songs.
Okay.
That was actually being done while the album was being mixed. But we weren't we didn't want to just push them along to put them on the record.
Sure.
If they weren't done. I think at that point, between the movie,
record was pretty well baked.
Well, we had the album, and then there's are people going to be cool with hearing 8 new songs only, because one of the songs didn't end up on the record.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, it just kind of, it's not that the song wasn't good. It's just kind of it just didn't step up to the rest of them in its current form. But
yeah, and then
but in a different in a different package,
maybe. Yeah.
You don't want a song to be like a throwaway. You never want a song to be a throwaway. At least I don't.
Just to do it. Don't put it on there just to put it on there.
Yeah, I think it'll give it it could have its own moment at some other time when it's not surrounded by these other things.
Yeah. And when you guys have multiple mixers, is that pretty collaborative in the sense you guys are passing back and forth mixing notes, or do you guys kind of own each song and then it is what it is? Because I know you guys had Rich Costey and I think maybe someone else mixed a few songs on this album.
So originally Tony Hoffer mixed Rebel Girl, and he did a great job with it. And he then did Kiss and Tell, and then we started working on the record, and I started kind of hearing what the record was going to sound like. And to me, it just kind of felt like, I think Rich Costey would be really interesting for this record.
Yeah.
And
he did Boxcar, right?
He did Boxcar Racer, but he's also done so many records that I absolutely love. A lot of the Muse stuff.
Yeah, Muse,
Mars Volta. I mean, stuff that's not even technically, Angels and Airwaves-esque, but he does a lot of cool stuff with electronic stuff like Phanogram and whatnot. So I knew that the rock songs were going to feel, aggressive, and I knew that even he has a really cool thing. And somewhere along the line, Rich reached out to Lon to play drums on the new Frank Turner album. It's so funny. I always get Frank Turner and Frank Carter.
Okay.
Confused.
Yeah.
From Gallows. Anyways, so Frank Turner, so that was during COVID, and Rich had moved to, I think, Vermont or something, and was just holed up in the studio out there. He's like, fuck it, I'm out of LA, I'm done with it. Yeah. So he was doing things remote, and so Rich had reached out to Elon to play drums on it, and Elon's like, yeah, I'll play drums on it. He's like, cool. Do you have somebody that can engineer it, and I'll just be on kind of remote? And Elon goes, I actually do. My brother.
Yeah, do I ever? Yeah.
Yeah. So we recorded drums for the Frank Turner record, and then I was just like, by the way, you might be getting a phone call.
Yeah,
saying
right.
about this.
Now
Angels
that I have
and
your
Airwaves.
attention.
Yeah. And
cool.
Yeah, it was a really good experience with Rich because he's got really good taste. And the only thing sometimes is that I have to sit there and keep track and make sure that all the kids get on the bus during the field trip. And that's definitely when there's so many little things that come in and out throughout this record.
Yeah.
It's always like, all right, so in the second verse, this has to be this. Or we'll have so many layers, like in Losing My Mind.
Sure.
Like there's a kind of hierarchy as to what needs to be heard first. Like the guitars need to be in there to drive it, but the main thing that you hear is that synth that's like in there. And
want to overpower certain things. Be careful of that.
Yeah. Yep. So a lot of the times it was just kind of like guiding Rich into like, all right, here's the hierarchy, the synth, the guitars, this, and then, the lead guitars. And then there's stuff that's meant to be in there, but you definitely don't want it to be at the forefront.
Sure.
You kind of just want it to be like somewhere in the background where like you hear it and you're, on your 17th listen, you're like, ooh, I never heard that.
Wait a second. Yeah.
Yeah. And whatnot. It was it was really cool. And we ended up, one of the things that was kind of cool for this record is that with the money that Rich knew he was going to be getting for doing the boxcar racer, he ended up buying this small Neve console. It's a BCM 10. So he's like, I'm pulling the BCM 10 out of storage for this album. I figured it'd be like
fitting
since I haven't really done any work with Tom since that record.
Nice.
And so it was a really good experience. I think he did a great job. And he did this thing where he just made the songs sound cohesive, and that's tough to do with a record that's so all across the board. And he just made it sound like a good version of what we have.
Right.
And it was also having one last thing. It's also having this person that comes in that's completely unbiased and is going to kind of be your final set of ears when it comes to he might do something where it's like, oh, I didn't hear it that way, but now that you do it that way, yes.
Right.
Like that's cool.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt, especially if you can trust that person. You know how good they are. So anything they're going to say is going to help.
Yeah. So a lot of the times the process with that would be, I'll have a conversation with Rich or send some notes. We'll send it back and forth between me and him. And then at that point is when we start sending it out to the band and whatnot. Because if we send it out right away, I feel like it's kind of like wasting everybody's like bandwidth, where it's like, Tom's not going to be able to hear the difference between this and that.
Get it to the point where you guys are on the same page. And
exactly. Then let's
band.
tackle it. And Tom will be like, oh, I want this part to poke out or be a little bit more present. And then we're doing minor notes at that point.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
So, Now, final question. I kind of wanted to end on this on purpose. Is
you just wanted it to end already?
Yeah.
You're just like, I'm done. I can't handle this.
This is the best thing ever. So I appreciate it so much. As these songs kind of were released, it was kind of difficult to understand what the overall sound of the album was going to be because from song to song, it was so different. I personally think playing the album itself just from front to back is the best listening experience as opposed to catching songs out of order. It kind of gives you that full ride. But if you had to explain to the listener and to the fans what the identity of this album is, what would you say for Lifeforms?
I think it's a record made for today with a lot of homage paid to the influences. I think also for fans of Tom, I think that this record has the most insight into his whole career musically. There, you have songs that you wouldn't necessarily, that don't necessarily feel like Angels and Airwaves.
Mm-hmm.
And even like on Neighborhoods, like I felt like he was bringing too much Angels and Airwaves into Blink. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like there was like that
bit of a polarizing album. For
like this could be, this could be an Angels song. And I think a lot of that was, I think that album was being worked on at the same time as Love. So it's like you're in a frame of
together.
mind. Right. So I think it was I think that's what I can say what it is. I think that there's definitely a lot of different eras of Tom in this record. I think it sounds like a modern record that sounds like sonically works today. It doesn't sound like some throwback to, even the songs that could sound very Blinkish.
Mm-hmm.
You don't hear him say like, "Oh, I feel like there's a Blink vibe in there, but it's not a direct like Blink song."
Yeah.
So I think that that's there, and I also think that Tom was really motivated to work on this record. I think it didn't feel forced. I don't think that he was thinking like, we need a certain kind of single. It was just like, let's just make an album, have fun, and
truly what he wanted to put out. Not
sometimes else. There's artists always want to be artists, but artists who have had the success that he has also understand that you can't just put out whatever you want, because you have to like have that balance between art and commerce, of which I'm kind of like, screw commerce. Like, honestly,
the art will survive if it's good.
I mean, you can be artistic and you can make things commercial by just making it be the best it is. I'm not saying be weird for the sake of being weird. I'm not saying be poppy and like motivated by hooks and like what's happening out there, and or trying to recapture what you had on another record and stuff like that. So for me, it's always about progressing and moving forward and what's new and what's going to separate this album from the next record. But I can say that this is probably the most engaged he's been in a record, and the most excited he's been to write an album since we've been working together. And I don't know if that's because we finally like found a winning formula in how we work together, like a process, like we're all comfortable with each other, or it's that he kind of accomplished something with To the Stars that he wanted to accomplish. And he was like, you know what? I'm so sick of aliens right now in Congress and this and that and blah, 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 blah. That I just really want to
dive back into music.
Just really go. I've always said like Tom kind of already beat the music video game. Like, you're not so like pumped to go play Super Mario Brothers again once you like finally beat it. You want to like move on to the next thing.
New challenge.
And so he kind of had that new challenge, and he kind of beat the whole UAP, as we can say. We don't want to be we don't want to be derogatory and offend Demi Lovato by calling them aliens.
Don't call them aliens.
No. But he was just in a completely different place, I think, mentally going into this record, and we had a lot of fun creating it. And I think you hear that in the record.
Yeah, for sure.
And whereas the Dreamwalker had a little bit of a push and pull, and everybody was kind of like getting used to each other, as they say dogs do, everybody was smelling butts. And like, what's
gotta get
his motivation?
with the pack.
And it's like, what's his motivation? What, and yeah, I think we were just in a great place. And I think we did stuff that was just kind of weird previous to this, like Chasing Shadows and Of Nightmares.
Yeah, kind of got you familiar with everyone's.
Yeah, and there was no focus on those things. That's the other thing that's a little bit different, is that I just recently went back and listened to Of Nightmares and Chasing Shadows, and like that whole era or time was a blur. Like, but I listened back and I go, wow, that's some really cool stuff. But I think we needed to go there and be a little bit weird and not worry about any songs going to radio or whatever. We're just kind of like writing companion pieces to books.
Yeah.
And that's really what it was.
Cool.
And this time I was like, all right, we're going to go do a record. The band's going to tour. This is going to be for real. And,
yeah. Very
and
cool.
That's sorry, I'm being interrupted.
No, you're good. Aaron, thank you so much for doing this. This was super awesome, not just for me as for the page but as a fan, I love talking about this stuff. It just fascinates me. So, and I know everyone's going to really appreciate this. So I know you're a busy guy. I really appreciate you meeting with us or meeting with me.
No problem.
And discussing everything. I think we'll wrap up. And again, for everyone out there, make sure you check out the album. It's out now, obviously, streaming everywhere. I know now I'm going to stay up thinking about the score, since Aaron just totally reversed anything I thought about what it would be. So
yeah, I think, and I think that's like that's the worst part of it, is that people always like imagine what the next steps are going to be, and then they're either like pleasantly surprised or like completely disappointed, and it's not because of anything other than what expectations they put into it. Because I think that's why people get weirded out with Radiohead so much, is because they want, it's like the Bends come out and they're like, oh, we know what the next record's going to be, and then it's OK Computer, and you're like, oh, and then they do OK Computer and it's like Kid A, and they're like, what is this crap? And then they're like, it's genius.
Very cool.
But not till after the fact.
For sure.
Anyways, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, bye.
Talk to you later.
Bye.